We begin by acknowledging with humility that the land where we are today is the territory of the people of the Salish Sea. Their presence is imbued in the waterways, shorelines, valleys, and mountains of the traditional homelands of the Coast Salish people since time immemorial. Please visit nativeland.ca to learn more about the Indigenous land where you live, work, and play. Next slide, please. So today, as a secondary bonus to our land acknowledgement statement, we're going to be premiering this film. It's called the Land Acknowledgement Video, and it was created by Children of the Setting Sun Productions to be used in harmony with the North Sound ACH Land Acknowledgement Statement and brief that some of you are probably familiar with from one of our partner learning sessions a couple years ago now. This film also describes the development process that went into creating the North Sound ACH land acknowledgement. So we're going to watch it now.
Hello, my name is Michaela Vendiola. My Indian name is Yaidawat from Swinomish and Koso from Walker River Paiute. I'm a project coordinator for North Sound Accountable Community of Health, and this here is my daughter, Tsi Kistaab, and her English name is Aviana. She is from the Lummi Nation, Walker River Paiute, and Swinomish as well. Today we're here to talk about land acknowledgements and hopefully help our partners and non-partners with developing a land acknowledgement statement.
Ow. Ow.
Land acknowledgements are rooted in having respect for the indigenous people of the United States by calling attention to the fact that American Indians and Alaskan Natives have lived through real experiences of colonization, genocide, and extreme land theft since 1492. Land acknowledgements support the continued efforts of tribes and our allies to educate non-tribal people about the true lived history of American Indians and Alaskan Natives and learn about our ways of life. So within tribal communities, land acknowledgements are not a new concept to us. You can see in this picture, these canoes are coming ashore to the Lummi Nation. This was at Paddle to Lummi 2019. Part of the protocol that happens here is that these canoes have to ask to come ashore before they step foot on Lummi Nation land. They have to do that at each tribe or nation that they go to throughout the canoe journey. And this is a piece of our tradition, our history that is passed down through generations.
My name is Rosalie Fish, and we are the Cowlitz Canoe family. I want to start off by thanking you with the hospitality and selflessness that you have accepted on this, when you open your hearts and your lands to all of these people and all of your relatives. I humbly ask permission on behalf of the Cowlitz tribe to come ashore and share food, dances, and stories.
Land acknowledgements do the job of pulling folks into the current conversation about tribal nations instead of leaving tribal nations in a past tense conversation. This has historically been the case and perpetuates a tribal erasure rhetoric and the belief that American Indians and Alaska Natives are relics of the past. But as you can see here, in the year 2019 and 2020, we are still very much practicing our Schlangen, or way of life, in this area. So implementing a land acknowledgement within a non-tribal organization is an opportunity for that organization to learn about the land where we all live, work, and play, and about the people that have been living here and will live here forever. Just as important, the work to structuralize tribal learning, especially in a non-tribal organization, should always be done through the lens of perpetually upholding and honoring tribal sovereignty.
We begin by acknowledging, with humility, that the land where we are today is the territory of the people of the Salish Sea. Their presence is imbued in the waterways, shorelines, valleys, and mountains of the traditional homelands of the Coast Salish people since time immemorial.
The North Sound ACH land acknowledgement was developed through guidance from content experts on tribal policy implementation. We also followed a number of steps that are also outlined in the land acknowledgement brief. Step 1, we suggest that your organization identifies the goals behind why you want to implement a land acknowledgement. This is important because you will need to stay grounded in that reasoning and have a comprehensive understanding as to why it's important to state land acknowledgements. Step 2 is to identify the neighboring tribe whose land your organization currently sits on. Step 3 is to review and utilize the Honor Native Land, a guide and call to acknowledgement toolkit. How to build a land acknowledgement. This was authored by the United States Department of Arts and Culture and was instrumental to the North Sound ACH in development of our land acknowledgement. Step 4 is to consult with your internal tribal liaison or your equity team. If your organization does not have an equity team or a tribal liaison, we suggest that that is also one of the first steps that you take in order to build coalitions with tribal nations. Step 5, and the final step, is to always leave room for correction and adaptation when working on land acknowledgements. This work is a continued learning process for everyone involved. Welcome to the Healthcare Authority. We start today with a land acknowledgement. We are meeting physically in Olympia on the traditional territories of the Coast Salish people, specifically the Nisqually and Squaxin Island peoples. Olympia and the South Puget Sound region are covered by the Treaty of Medicine Creek, signed under duress in 1854. The employees of the state of Washington here in the room and participating by webinar are guided by the Centennial Accord and Chapter 43376 RCW. Respecting and affirming tribal sovereignty and working with our tribal governments throughout the state in government-to-government partnership. I specifically included the Healthcare Authority's land acknowledgement within this written brief because they state the treaty that the land that they sit on is covered by, as well as the tribes that are most closest to them in proximity. And they also state that these treaties that were signed under duress of Native people, so acknowledging the true history in their land acknowledgement. I also like their land acknowledgement because they specifically state that they are committed to following and upholding government-to-government relationships. Although land acknowledgements are not an apology, they do serve as an opportunity to state intent and the intent to learn about tribal nations and tribal people in your region. Specifically for organizations that are focused on health, it's important to understand and remember that when implementing land acknowledgements, the extreme health disparities and social determinants of health that impact American Indian Alaska Native populations are a result of the colonization, attempted genocide, and extreme land theft of Native people. The land acknowledgement can help strengthen and build or rebuild relationships with tribal nations that may not have been available before. A land acknowledgement is one way that an organization can express their intent and eagerness to learn more about tribes and tribal people.
Okay, thank you everyone for being with us as we watched the premiere of that land acknowledgement video. It's a bit nostalgic for me. This video was created when I was first hired, when I was still a project coordinator. It was probably one of the first projects I was asked to support and lean into with Children of the Setting Sun Productions. And clearly pre-COVID times. Also, my daughter speaks in full sentences now, so a lot of change has happened since then. I appreciate you taking the time to be here and just listen to what was said in that film. So our time today, we're going to start with a session framing from Liz Baxter, the executive director for North Sound ACH. And there's a connection between these films and the vital conditions that we've all been engaging with and learning from, specifically the thriving natural world. So we're going to get into that a little bit. We're going to have a film watch party, a little bit of a change for all of the partners today, just a different style, learning modality. We'll watch 2 other films this morning. And then we'll get into a theme of story and legacy. And hopefully you all had an opportunity to watch the Salmon People Project film and look at some of the resources that were sent out. We have staff from Children of the Setting Sun Productions and let's see, Natasha Fry, Jordan Reiber, and Mr. Daryl Hilaire with us today. And Santana Rebang I saw. So we're going to be getting the opportunity to talk with them about these films and the work that they've been doing over this past year plus. And then finally we'll be able to open this space for any partner reflections, questions and answers, and some closing remarks. Next slide, please. So now I'll pass it over to my executive director, Liz Baxter. I think she's, Liz, you're on. I saw your name in the chat. I'll hand over.
I am on, and actually Nicole's going to do the first piece of the introduction to the vital conditions, and then I'll step in after Nicole does that.
Sounds great. Nicole, over to you.
Thank you. And I always enjoy talking about these vital conditions. So just as Michaela was saying, we have been on this tribal and equity learning journey and have met some amazing people along the way, including the folks at Children of the Setting Sun and community initiatives. And through this connection with community initiatives, we've been really diving into this Thriving Together document and kind of movement, maybe is a better word to describe it. Today, we're making the connection to the importance of the thriving natural world. And past learning sessions has focused on housing. They've focused on job security. We've kind of been sort of checking away on the different various vital conditions and digging into them a little bit deeper with you all and trying to find examples of what this looks like. And today, and especially in today's, coming on 2 years of a COVID global pandemic, I think we've all been, maybe this is our slight silver lining, spending some more time outside. And it does bring up more areas, I think, to those of us who've been working in healthcare around the importance from a health, an emotional, physical, spiritual, of the connection to the land where we are. And we've put up the resource just to kind of share how this does connect back to vital conditions. You'll see once you dig in a little bit, if you want to look into this, it starts talking about how in this current moment, we're seeing a changing ecosystems. We're seeing shifts in the impacts of climate change, especially among like with weather and the heat waves that we've been having, or the severe flooding. I mean, just things are changing quicker than they ever have before. We're seeing more need for environmental justice, and I think that because those who have always known that the natural world and the land around us is just so vital to us surviving, it really is important to bring it back into the conversations around, health systems change. There is a connection to it. So, I encourage you, dig in, look into there. This is also an area that we see ACH and the network having a role in, especially around climate change and emergency response to it, having a more equitable lens to that. So I'm so thrilled you all have joined us this morning, and I'm looking forward to also watching the videos with you together collectively. And I will hand it back over to Liz.
Great. Thanks, Nicole. Some of you have heard me talk before about Daryl stopping in my office and the two of us talking about going on a learning journey. But I just jumped off of a phone call with some national partners talking about place-based change. And we ended up talking a lot about what do we mean when we talk about place. And, rewatching the land acknowledgement video was just another reminder to me of what it means to be on a journey, which is, our land acknowledgement statement was a beginning, not an end. That how we actually learn about this place where we live, the people who have been here before us since time immemorial, what does that mean? Just this connection to place just continues to kind of come in waves, influencing our work and our vision looking forward. So we are incredibly grateful to our partners at Children of the Setting Sun Productions, and glad that Daryl, Natasha, and Jordan are here on the call. And as you all have heard, this is a really different kind of a learning session where we're actually going to sit and watch some of the productions together and hopefully breathe this in a way that we might not if we were only talking and listening with our brain cells, hoping that this also hits you with your heart. And so with that, I think we're going to shift gears. And Daryl, Natasha, Jordan, I think and hope that you're on, and that you're going to lead us and introduce kind of our film watch party here.
Great. Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Nicole. So yes, we're going to jump into our film watch party. And as it states here on the slide, the following films have been created by Children of the Setting Sun Productions. Please, if you haven't already, check out their website, social media platforms. There's a lot of great content on there. Next slide, please. So I'm going to ask Natasha Fry to virtually come forward and share a little bit about just a brief overview of this film here, the Women of Journeys finding our medicine. And then we'll get into watching it.
Thanks, Michaela. So in 2019, when Lummi hosted the Paddle to Lummi, the canoe journey, Children of the Setting Sun Productions hosted several of our funders and just members of the community that had never been out to Lummi before. And we realized that the group of program officers from several of the foundations that were providing our long-term organizational funding also had a lot of background in the issues that were coming up at the canoe journey. At this particular canoe journey, a lot of the canoes that were landing were dedicated to missing and murdered Indigenous women. And there was a candlelight vigil, and it just started emerging that the theme of missing and murdered Indigenous women was very prevalent at the canoe journey. So we decided to gather together the program officers that are Hester Dillon, Victoria Sweet, and then also Solana Booth was there. She's not a program officer, but she had a lot of background in this subject. Victoria is also an attorney and tribal member. Hester is a Cherokee tribal member. And then we also had Carmenza, who is from, I believe she was from Ecuador, and she was visiting kind of as a representative of a group of women that were working on environmental issues. And so we just sat them all down, and they were interviewed by Bella James, who is with Children of the Setting Sun Productions and part of the podcast team and other projects that we're working on. So we just sat down with them and had a conversation, and what came from it was really beautiful. They all had great things to say, and we decided to share this video today because it gives a lot of context. It sort of sets the foundation for some of the conditions that are experienced by women today and in relation to Mother Earth as well. They all did a really great job of connecting things and just providing the historical background for some of the contemporary health disparities and struggles that Native women in particular face. So with that, I'll hand it back over to you, Michaela. Thank you.
Thank you, Natasha. And let's jump into watching the film.
Canoe journeys for me going back to our old relationships, our old ties with our neighboring tribes and neighboring nations. A lot of this is reconnecting the old alliances and relationships in the history, and also healings from some of the traumatic history as well. And then going through, past that, going through kind of meditation and having a clear space and really reflecting on a lot of things that you've carried throughout the year that you really want to put into each paddle and each stroke when you're on the canoe.
This is a missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls memorial for women and missing women and girls. And so this is a dress that represents what that we will never forget them.
When people came over to the Americas and they found communities and nations that were already existing, if you could create a false story that the people there weren't really people like you, that they were savage, that they were a lower being, it helped them justify taking the lands. It helped them justify coming in and riding over entire cultures. Then suddenly everyone felt just a little bit superior. It made it easier for them to come in and do all these terrible things that otherwise they could never admit to themselves that they were doing. If you read through the historical records, that's exactly what happened. Everyone was writing in their journals and sending back these tales to Europe of these natives, these savages, and mixed with these tales of savagery were these tales of the women. The tales of the women were all hypersexualized tales of women who were lascivious and who were there for sexual pleasure. That dialogue, that false story that came from the very instant of contact with Indigenous communities in the Americas was the underpinning of everything that has come forward in the relationship between Indigenous peoples and those who settled on this continent. And I think it has impacted how the public in general has looked at women of color, who gets to be a victim and who is not a victim. That by itself has had an incredible impact on how easy it is for people to abuse and harm Indigenous women and girls, and eventually just Indigenous communities and families in general. And I think it also has had a huge impact on us ourselves. As Indigenous women, how we viewed ourselves, whether we were more vulnerable to certain types of exploitation, what kind of healing that we needed. It's a type of healing that no one really talked about if you didn't understand it. And sometimes we didn't understand it ourselves.
My name is Rosalie Fish, and we are the Cowlitz Canoe family. I want to start off by thanking you for the hospitality and selflessness that you have accepted on this, when you open your hearts and your lands to all of these people and all of your relatives. So I want to thank you for that. Today, we dedicated our poll to pray for the missing and murdered relatives that we all know. And on our canoe, you'll see these red ribbons with the names of our stolen relatives who we prayed for today. And with our handprint on our faces, we wear that to tell anybody here that we stand with you. And with that, I humbly ask permission on behalf of the Cowlitz tribe to come ashore and share food, dances, and stories.
I think the work to bring attention to our missing and murdered relatives is incredibly important, and it seems that that work is really, it's happening at a community level, and it's happening across regions and nations, and I think that regional and national work is important. People are not just missing and murdered, but they're also unaccounted for. And that's, in my view, it's a continued erasure of our relatives. And so when I think about where solutions lie, I really think that the solutions lie in our communities. They lie in our languages and in our traditions. They lie in our ability to help raise and support our relatives to be healthy and strong in their identities so that they are not as vulnerable to people who would harm or exploit them.
Culture and ceremony and our way is amazing and well. Knowing our creation stories is amazing and well. However, again, it comes down to, if your false knowings are you can't trust, if your false knowings are you don't belong here, you don't deserve love, then you're not allowed, or you're not enabling yourself to integrate those creation stories. You're unable to heal or reconcile those first traumas. Because I know that as a first people, we're carrying traumas that didn't only happen to me, right? There's generations of these being missing and murdered. There's generations of babies being taken, and there's generations of the walks and not having our ability to carry a drum and those things. So like when a sister goes missing, or when a trauma does happen, my family, I teach about safety, and that's physical, spiritual, emotional, mental safety, and it's my job and it's my role, and I'm so humbled to be in that position with my grandbabies, with my children, with my canoe family, to provide those experiences of what does safety look like. So being a First People, I've had opportunities to do that. I've been able to reconcile and heal myself, my womb, my 8th direction, my 9th direction, through the false knowings of being objectified, exploited, and that kind of thing so that I can lead my family the best way.
A great deal of the answer to it is going to come as we reconnect with our history, we reconnect with our stories and our songs and the cultures, because I firmly believe that as our cultures come back and as we start remembering them more, we will see the high esteem that women were held in equal part with the men. We will see we as women have always been valued in ways that we have forgotten, in ways that maybe our communities have forgotten because of these historical stories, these false stories that were circulated about us from the very beginnings, the very underpinnings of this country on this land. And I hope that, I don't just hope, I really believe that we are starting to find each other. All over the world, connecting with each other and saying we are finding our songs again, we're finding our medicines again, we're finding our strength again. And together, we're going to create that shield of protection for ourselves and for each other so that we can truly fight this. And we desperately need our men to continue to stand strong behind us and supporting us in this so that we never fall back into those patterns that divided us, those ugly, false story patterns that have divided us in the past.
I feel incredibly encouraged by just the resurgence of our languages and our songs and our traditions, because that gives me hope that fewer people will be vulnerable, and with time, violence will really will be unacceptable.
This candle's being lit for missing, murdered, Indigenous women, never forgotten.
CM na Sjalata CM na Ellis Downuch, na Slit Quenisquel, Aquino Squel CM, to Kachnin, to Schwalakwa, to all Lalo, Tia Squachil, Heichka CM, Anuch Ait and Kachnin, Tia Squachil CM, Heichka CM, Nequelia, Nich, and at Huiwo, Hangasto. Friends, relatives, behalf of Lummi Nation, behalf of our elders, I want to thank each of you that came forward, answered the invitation, paddled here to Lummi. I want to thank each of you for bringing your good feelings this morning. And thank you all for sharing your songs, your dances with our community. We hope that when you make your journey back home, that you find your homes the way that you left them. On behalf of Lummi Nation here, we have gifts for your family. We ask that you share it with the members however you see fit. On behalf of Lummi Nation, with all of my heart, I say Sayatsin Platinaquelia. I raise my hands to each of you. Haichka Simnaquelia sa ana atla tiesquachil. Thank you for being here this morning. Haichka Siem.
Thank you everyone for putting those thoughts into the chat. Please continue to do that. To try to stay on track with this limited amount of time we have today, I'm gonna call forward Jordan Reiber. If you're on the line, please come forward and feel free to introduce yourself, and if you could share a brief overview of this next film we're gonna watch, ACH Best Practices, Schlangen Village.
Hi, thanks, Michaela. And hello, everybody. I'm Jordan Reiber. I work with the Children of the Setting Sun and Daryl Hilaire. I started working with Daryl a couple years ago now, and in the context of working on a film about opioid recovery from opioid addiction in the region, tribal communities in the region. And so Schlangen village is one of the places that we first passed when he first took me out to Lummi on a tour there, and I met some of the leadership there. I then got brought into more of the work that Daryl and Children of the Setting Sun were doing, which includes this work with the ACH and the Best Practices series. So this is one of those videos that features the work of the amazing work of the Schlangen village up here at Lummi. I'll leave it at that. I'm not sure if Daryl wants to add anything else or.
I'm gonna have opportunity for Daryl to speak after this next video. I do want to give him enough time to be able to do that, so I think right now we're gonna watch this film and then open it up to hear from Mr. Daryl Hilaire. So if we could screen share the film and watch that together, that would be great. Thank you, Jordan.
Thank you.
My name is Dinah Fair. I'm the housing director here, and I'm an enrolled Lummi Nation. Last month was 35 years here for me at housing. I started my career in housing as a counselor and eventually worked myself about 20 years ago into the director role. Old Mutual Help Homes, I think, was the first project, and there was 20 of those. The next project was McKinsey. We started out with 35 units there, and now we have over 150 units. We have 118 apartments at Quina. We've also helped build and construct the Youth Academy. Also, we built the Northwest Indian College dorms, and we built Little Bear Creek for the elders. This most recent project, the Schlangen Village, is a unique project because it was built around what we would need for people to be successful. It was at the time we needed to start building something to help people get well and build it for the kids. This is really new to us as tribal members, getting the drugs coming into the reservation. But this younger generation that are just below me, they're into the drugs, which either hit around, the late 90s, the early 2000s. Schlangen, the name that we chose, its definition is the way of life. We hear a lot about people practicing their Schlangen, out in the waters or in their ceremonies, a way of life. And so we looked at this as Schlangen could be a better way of life.
There's a lot of different reasons as to why people are there. One thing I really like about the commonality of the population is that nobody judges anybody else. We all have our history. It's not about perfection, it's just about honesty and accountability and growth, and that's all we're looking for. We designed the community specifically for the concept of community. It was designed specifically so there'd be group interaction with the quads. We have doors opening up to other doors. It's all intentional, that porches are facing one another. It's designed specifically so that we have women's groups, men's groups, and weekly gatherings. But what does it look like to create community? The community itself is really the people.
Here we'll go trick-or-treating on.
One of the requirements moving in is that they go through a psychological evaluation. And what I'm evaluating is honesty and accountability. The whole idea about the community is that if someone is honest, then they recognize there's something they want to change. And if they're accountable, that means they're willing to do it. Lots of people want housing, but we're not there to provide housing. We're providing an opportunity for people to change their lives.
I was drinking to cover up pain, but I'm here at Schlangen and I'm happy.
I'm thankful for having this place to let my kids be free. It feels like home.
We moved into this Schlangen village, got the kids here with us. It's really nice to finally have our own place, like to call home.
There's a story behind these young families. Most of these are tied to some sort of opiate has hit their family in some way, but they have come a long ways. Housings are crucial for any individual to be able to get their structure together. You could do all this counseling for them, but if they didn't have a place to go, they come back and they're a mess all over again. Here, at least, they got a structure. They know where they're gonna go. They know where their kids are gonna get off the bus at. So that's what we geared to wrap around with. So we know they have a house, then we could help them.
Housing is what everybody needs. And so housing becomes just a natural hub for a wraparound. And all the other programs come around that to support their clients, and then bringing other people together to talk about our families. You know, where are they? What do they need?
I think this whole thing is about children. It's really about the children having a safe place. These parents aren't bad parents. You know, they've learned what not to do because what happened to them, and they're just happy that they have a second chance.
Thank you for watching that with us. Please, again, feel free to put any questions or thoughts that you had about the Schlangen Village film into the chat. Right now, I want to pass it over to Daryl Hilaire so that he can have some time to talk about his organization and like the purpose behind these films. Daryl, are you on the line?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, I'll hand it to you now. Thank you.
Thanks everybody. I'm here with Santana Rabang and Bo Garreau. He's off camera here, but we're here in the office spending this time with all of you today to share some of the work that we've done. And as Liz has reiterated in our time together, our relationship together, it's not only about the journey, it's about the evolution and the things that we need to change about ourselves as people. And we're learning that through this work with ACH, with all of our other partners in the area, Western Washington University, Peace Health Organization, non-GMO, the list goes on, Northwest City College, Swinomish. We're understanding that as a people, all of us were looking for something in the face of most importantly, climate change, and the effects of climate change having on our collective psyche. We do know that what's going to have to change is ourselves, our values, our behaviors, what we do. Those things can be something we can do together so that as we move forward here in telling our story, that it's a collective story towards those things that are contrary to greed, contrary to accumulation of wealth for the purposes of having wealth. Those ideas that are destructive to the planet, to ultimately each other. So with all of that said, we're culminating all of that in our Salmon People project, where salmon is central to our way of life, and grabbing those stories from our fishers and from those leaders that are in the front lines, trying to remove dams and foster restoration of the environment, especially the watershed. Those people that are on the front lines opposing artificial salmon be grown in our waters, those kinds of things. And that represents the fight. That represents the changes that we need in each and every one of us towards the idea of gratitude for what Mother Nature gives us every day. Clean water, air, the food that we eat, all of that is something that we have to learn to be more grateful for. And then from that, learn how to share amongst each other, much like all of you share your resources with the people that you work for. We need to share amongst ourselves these new ideas so we have a chance, you know. We got to give ourselves a chance at leaving something for our kids and our grandkids that's better from what we found when we were born and we were brought into this world. That's our responsibility. And that's where we're going as an organization, to step into this fight and be a voice for those people that are doing the real hard work, as we see them, those people that have their boots in the water. That's what we really want to get behind and strongly support. So this is where we're going. This is how we're evolving, and we hope that we can continue to share our work with you so we could share these ideas and make a better world for all of us to live. Thank you.
Thank you, Daryl, and Santana and Bo for being here with us today. Santana, did you have any thoughts that you wanted to share while I have you on the screen?
Yeah, just to add a little bit onto what Daryl was saying. My name is Santana Rabang. I work here as a producer at Children of the Setting Sun Productions. I'm also a part of the Young and Indigenous podcast. And a lot of, what we're doing here is just collecting stories and uplifting voices of one another. I think one of my things that I believe that we're also doing is, since the silent film era of when, film was first invented, Indigenous peoples have been portrayed through film since time immemorial, of us, being killed off, of us being portrayed as these savages, as people who are drunks. And a lot of what we're doing here at Children of the Setting Sun production is, giving a true and honest perspective of who we are as Indigenous peoples, because when you see that the way we've been portrayed through film, it's allowed this systematic racism to be passed down, and is allowed other people to believe that they think that they know who Indigenous peoples are and what we represent. So I think a lot of what we're doing too is changing the narrative through film of who we are as Indigenous peoples, so that we can create change not only just within our communities, but also the broader communities. And a lot of what we're doing with the Young and Indigenous podcast is a lot of youth development, and we're gathering stories of stuff that's meaningful to us as the youth, and how we can further create that momentum of keeping the culture and the language and our stories alive for the next 7 generations. So
thank you, Santana.
Also, sorry, one more thing. Every Wednesday, we started a new live stream series called The Salmon People, where we go live every Wednesday at 6 p.m. on Facebook, on our Children of the Setting Sun Productions Facebook page, where we interview people every week who identify strongly with salmon, and just ask them a few questions in correlation to who they are, what salmon means to them, and how they identify with salmon. So if anyone would like to join us tonight at 6 p.m. on our Facebook page, you're more than welcome to.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great. I've watched a few of those interviews, podcasts. You all do a great job over there. And for our partners, we're going to be putting a one pager with all of these resources that have been talked about. I saw a few people asking if they'd become available. The answer is yes. So if we could share the slides again, slide 10, that would be helpful. So we just want to well, Children of the Setting Sun Productions specifically, as well as us at North Sound ACH, we're looking for your feedback, our partners. The first question that we're hoping you all can put some answers to within the chat, or if you want to come off mute, we have a little bit of time to do that. And I'll also put the first question into the chat box. Feel free to put some thoughts that you have into the chat box. And I'm going to mute myself in case anybody else wants to have opportunity to talk.
Hey, Michaela, this is Liz. You know, it's just so interesting having this type of a session, because one of the things I just want to start with is film, especially these so beautifully done. They actually are like another language to at least my brain, because it's giving me information, but it's also touching me emotionally, which I think, you know, I think of the name of the other podcast series, One from the Heart, that, you know, film allows us to actually have things touch our heart and our emotions as well as our brains, which is just such an amazing asset to have here in the region and to have this work be done so beautifully. So just a lot of gratitude to Daryl and all the folks that work at Children of the Setting Sun Productions.
Thank you, Liz. Yes, duality. I agree. I come across that often, and in this role that you have me in as the tribal liaison, I agree with that. We have a couple questions coming in, so I'll read them out to the group. As a DVOP, what would you suggest when interacting with Native veterans to help find employment and first build rapport before diving into assisting with employment? That's a good question. Yeah, the Native veterans in general are a special population, pretty necessary and crucial to support them. Does anybody at my team, ACH, or at Children of the Setting Sun have a response that's coming to mind for this question? I might pass it off to anyone who might have something on their brain about that.
Can I ask, Jose, what is DVOP?
Good morning. So I'm a disabled veteran case manager for the Disabled Veteran Outreach Program, and I'm on the eastern side of Washington. So I have Toppenish, which is like an hour away, but I haven't been into the reservation to assist with any veteran Native Americans. So I want to make sure that if the opportunity arises to establish that rapport, what would you suggest for me, being the Disabled Veteran Outreach Program, coming into the land of the reservation, so that way I can make sure I'm not doing anything incorrectly? That's where I guess I'm going with that first and foremost. Does that make sense?
That's really helpful. Thank you for that. And is there anybody from, and Michaela, you may also have this information of the tribes and how to do some, you know, introduction and relationship building in that part of the state?
Yeah, I was gonna say the eastern side of the mountains, at least in tribal nations, even is different than on this side. The way that they do their like cultural protocols, and it has trickled down into the like delivery of services. I have to do some thinking on that. I am familiar with Toppenish. I've been there I would say probably the first step would be to see if that tribe has veteran services specifically available. That would be the starting point for trying to get in contact with somebody who is familiar with their services. Most tribes, they attempt to support the people who have been in, who have served the country. I would also say to look at if there are like specific treaty rights that touch on like service delivery for healthcare, and how those match with like the veteran services that you're able to offer. This might be like a big question to try to answer right now. The veterans are important people. They do important things for the country and for all people. So yeah, I would definitely start with trying to contact somebody from Toppenish tribe or reservation, to see how best they want their veterans supported.
Okay, perfect. I just wanted to see if maybe you might have known, but yeah, this gives me a direction to go. Okay, thank you.
So Amanda Sloan, the best person to contact for clarifying questions regarding the process of developing a land acknowledgement, you can contact me. You can contact the emails that Natasha put into the chat. I think that the best examples that I've seen come through of like collaboration are when I've seen organizations go to multiple different people, and multiple different like tribal nations or organizations, not just one person, of course, but attempting to get like insight and guidance from more than one or two people. And that's especially important in this region because the tribes are so closely located to each other. In Skagit County, you have like 3 tribes that are in of that region. Skagit, that being Upper Skagit, of course, Samish, and Swinomish. So yeah, Natasha put those emails into the chat, and that one-pager document with the resources that I was mentioning, I'll include Children of the Setting Sun production emails and also the resources that we at North Sound ACH have already developed, just as a starting point. Does anybody have a question that they want to come off mute and ask? Feel free to do that. Thanks for the comments in the chat too. Pamela, to your question, I like that question too. That's yeah, I particularly am interested in that topic, sexual and reproductive health within the tribes. Also difficult to do within like a sovereign nation. I would start with the like sexual assault, domestic violence offices that each tribe has. They all have those offices. And that would be the segue into like making connections and seeing where a non-tribal organization could provide support or lean in and collaborate. You're at Mount Baker Planned Parenthood. Also, I've heard Dr. Dakota Lane speak on this topic once, recently, pretty recently. It was at a Peace Health hosted him as one of their tribal equity series. And it's pretty interesting, and yeah, it's a crucial time to be having these types of conversations. He showed this graph that just like astounded me, relating to LARC and like reproductive health, but he showed a graph showing that when they began introducing the use of LARC to the community, rates of teen pregnancies significantly went down. Lowest point was in like 2018. And then in 2019, when COVID hit, and 2020, they tripled from the lowest point back up. So I think it's a pretty crucial time to like be wanting to collaborate with communities that are seeing the results of lack of reproductive health or access, sexual health or access.
And Michaela, this is Nicole. I was just going to add, I think it's also important for non-tribal organizations to look at, and I'll put a few in the chat as an example, just the, and Michaela did mention it, you know, each tribe has is set up differently with their public health departments, how they respond to public health. And so I'm going to add the Northwest Washington Indian Health Board is a great resource, the American Indian Health Commission, Washington, and then also the Northwest Portland Area Indian Health Board. These are resources and organizations that are outstanding in the work they do with the tribes, for the tribes, and have that lens of health education to it. And it's a great place to start to see what's already in existence, because as Michaela said, majority have something in place already, and some through the school systems and things like that.
Yeah, and Michaela, this is Liz. You know, just kind of scrolling through the comments, I wanted to just lift up something that Natasha's put in the chat box a couple of times. You know, over the last probably 3+ years, there have been, you know, different organizations that have wanted to explore this notion of land acknowledgement and, you know, starting or building or enhancing their relationships with tribal partners. And Children of the Setting Sun, along with our tribal liaison, have just been like an amazing resource. And I know that Daryl and Natasha and team have worked with multiple organizations, sometimes in small ways, just a single meeting, to their recent work that you saw in the chat with Peace Health. So, you know, our hope is to continue to support the ability for different organizations to start on this journey internally as well. And, you know, again, just have appreciated Children of the Setting Sun Productions being able to work with our partners directly and not necessarily having to include us or our team, but getting that work started on your own as well.
Thank you, Liz. And I know we're about to hit the time to go. I did have one last question. If you all have an answer or answers or thoughts to it. This was an ask of Children of the Setting Sun to you all. How can these film resources be developed to further cultivate usability across sectors, North Sound ACH community, and partners? So if you have any guidance or like thoughts around that question, please feel free to put them in the chat, and we will make sure Children of the Setting Sun gets that feedback. Tiffany, can you screen share slide 11? Thank you. So these resources I embedded into the slideshow, which makes it a little bit harder for my team to access them. My apologies here. These resources will be sent out in the follow-up document. Yes, the links to the videos will be sent within that document also. Permission to share, yes, you can share these resources that are going to be sent out and any of the videos that are live. The Q&A with CSSP, yeah, that's a good follow-up. We also, thank you, Tiffany, for putting in the chat. Last week, was it last week? My weeks just blur together still. So Tiffany put into the chat a link to the Children of the Setting Sun Productions Indigenous Peoples Day event, and it was a great event, a long event, but really great content. So if you have time to watch even some of it, or just look around. Oh yeah, thank you, Liz. Can you go to the next slide, Tiffany? Sorry. So this is another opportunity to support one of the other groups that one of the projects and groups that I support as the ACH staff is the North Sound Indigenous Futurity Alliance. These links and the registration form for our conference I can send out into the resource page, but on November 4th and 5th, we're going to be hosting our second annual North Sound Indigenous Youth and Young Leaders Conference. It is a conference specifically for young people. You don't have to be Native, you don't have to be Indigenous, but you do have to be within the age range of 13, 14 to 24. But we are looking for any partners who are interested in supporting this conference or ongoing events. We've hosted like 4 events virtual events within this past year of COVID. And it's our second annual. So the first conference was hosted last October. Our keynote speaker is going to be Rena Priest from Lummi Nation. And it's pretty incredible. She's the first Native and the first woman to hold the title of the Washington State Poet Laureate. We're very excited to have her. This conference is the conference, and the concepts and the speakers are all like the ideas and requests of young Native Indigenous people in this region. So I've just been excited and happy to help elevate what they ask for. Can you go to the next slide quickly? I know we're at 1 minute over. I'll just leave it with this final slide. We're gonna download these chat questions and try to put answers to the questions that you brought forward. The next partner learning session is gonna be next month, November 17th. Same time, 10 to 11:15, and the focus being on belonging and civic muscle of the vital conditions for well-being and justice. And with that, I think that we can close out as people put their final comments in. Thank you for being here today, everyone.